I'm here to do one thing, is to bring one of these creatures back. I don't want to talk right now.
Tom, don't get mad.
Just keep the camera off right now, okay? I said I don't want to talk. You got it? Joan, get me a Snapple.
Welcome back, Squatchers. A new year, a new direction, all kinds of interesting information. Gonna lay it all out for you. The history of hoaxing. That's right. Hoaxing is exposed this season on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. Why? Well, because it's important to know where the bullshit starts. Welcome, everybody, to the Squatchers Lounge podcast, season 8. Come at me, bro. Chewbacca call or fat girl fart? You decide. Hello, everybody. I am the host of this mess, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and we are here tonight live talking about the hoaxing of Ivan Marx. That's right. Who is Ivan Marx, and why is that important? Because he leads to a whole line of hoaxers. Lo, there do I see my ancestors back to the beginning. And Ivan Marx, well, he seemed to be the king crapazoid of hoaxing. And we will get there tonight. As I said last week, don't forget Reverend Jeff's Cryptid Corner and Paranormal Escapades. That's right. Paranormal.com/cryptid corner will put you into the page. If you like what we do here on the podcast, consider being a patron. This page is about to get very, very, very busy. I know I keep saying that, but it's actually true. I've got content coming. It's in the works. I'm working on it daily. $1 general admission will get you access to all the content that goes up there behind the subscription bar, and there will be a bunch of stuff out there that will not be behind the subscription wall. So that being said, you guys have heard, I'm sure, about the about YouTube taking a lot of channels offline and demoting a lot of channels and taking away monetization and making sure that adult content isn't somehow advertised to children, and making all of us content creators classify and clarify that yes, we make children's content, or no, we don't make children's content. For the record, this channel is not for children under the age of 13, and I would suggest you be 18 to watch the show without a parent. That's plain and simple. Your parent should be involved in stuff that you watch on YouTube if you are under the age of 13, period. Stop letting the internet babysit your children, damn it. It's no good for anybody. Anyhow, that's enough of that public service announcement from the Reverend Jeff. We do have a quasi theory from our man Quasi Dean tonight. It's been real shy of news. I don't know what's going on. So, you know, it is the middle of the winter and the snowpocalypse is upon us, and I am literally just awaiting the crashing of storms and everything to start hitting us. They're talking about snow down as far as 1,000 feet into the foothills. So snowpocalypse is about to hit the western Sierras here. Yeah, I got to keep remembering that I live on the other side of the coast, and that's where we are at. So, what, who, and why are we talking about tonight? We are talking about the hoaxer, Mr. Ivan Marx. And who is, and who was Ivan Marx? The biography on IMDb, Ivan Marx was an animal tracker, woodsman, hunting guide, explorer, adventurer, accomplished nature photographer, and dedicated Bigfoot hunter. Ivan first began his Bigfoot research in the 1950s. He was involved in the Bossburg, Washington Cripplefoot track finds in November of 1969 and claimed to have shot actual footage of a crippled Sasquatch in October of 1970. Marx briefly worked for 3 months for renowned Bigfoot researcher Peter Byrne, who later became one of Ivan's biggest and most vehement detractors. Moreover, Ivan also collaborated with famed physical anthropologist Grover Krantz. There should be a doctor in there somewhere. In 1976, Marx narrated, co-produced, and appeared as himself in the lively and enjoyable documentary, The Legend of Bigfoot. Ivan also was a cinematographer on the picture. He subsequently followed this feature with 2 more documentaries, In the Shadow of Bigfoot and Bigfoot, Alive and Well, in 1982. Marx and his wife Peggy lived in Bernie Shasta County, California. Although widely derided as a fraud by many Sasquatch experts, Ivan always insisted that his movies and photographs of Bigfoot were real. He was a mentor to the controversial fellow Bigfoot researcher, Tom Biscardi. Ivan Marx died in 1999. So there is a good idea of who Ivan Marx wanted you to know or think Ivan Marx was, because this actual biography was written by them for his biography of the film, the Bigfoot documentary. So that's what we're looking at here. If we come over and we take a look at the cryptozoology and cryptozoo news here, they have like the ultimate hoaxing timeline. It literally lays out year by year who was involved with what, and it's a fantastic thing. Starting all the way back, as just referenced, in 1960, Ivan Marx is a member of the Pacific Northwest Expedition, sponsored by Tom Slick. Interactions with John Green, Bob Titmus, Rene DeHinden, and Peter Byrne, several personality and lifelong conflicts were seeded during that 1960s adventure. Now, Tom Slick, of course, the millionaire monster hunter who had sponsored a lot of the Bluff Creek investigations after the 1958 finds in Bluff Creek. Not so much the Wallace fake tracks, but the ones that weren't. Led to the 1967 Patterson-Gilman Bigfoot film in Bluff Creek. Now, directly after that, funny enough, in 1967, we'll be talking about Ricky Trailer Chuck Dyer, who was born that year. We'll get to that name later on in the season, and it's funny how he's also tied to Ivan Marx. December of 1967, Tom Biscardi's claims that his seeing the Tonight Show is what inspired him into Bigfoot, but yet he already knew Ivan Marx, which was kind of strange. Now, in 1969, Ivan Marx moves from Bernie, California to Bossburg, Washington State. In November of 1969, a butcher by the name of James Rhodes near Bossburg, Washington, at the dump finds tracks of a quote-unquote crippled Bigfoot not far from where Ivan Marx lives. Ivan Marx tells John Green, who tells Rene DeHinden, that he is hunting the crippled Bigfoot and will capture it. Now, Green, DeHinden, and Bob Titmus and Peter Byrne descend upon Bossburg, Washington. Many tracks are found. Other local Bigfooters, including Norm Davis and Jim Hopkins, get caught up in the Bigfoot search in Bossburg as well. Roger Patterson and Dennis Jensen show up to investigate, along with Tom Page, who pumps money into the effort. The famed casts are taken of Cripplefoot that Grover Krantz and John Napier, as well as Jeff Meldrum, I think there should be a doctor in there somewhere, he uses primary evidence of Bigfoot. Local man John Metlow claims to have captured a Bigfoot and is holding it in a nearby mine shaft. He also says that he has the foot of a Sasquatch in a freezer and has offered $50,000 for it, even though no one ever sees it. Mhm. Now, according to the Reading Searchlight 1970 newspaper, Tom Biscardi's mentor, Ivan Marx, from his base in Botsburg, Washington, says that he'll capture a Bigfoot within a year. I believe we've heard Tom make that claim a time or two. 1970 as well. Ray Wallace attempts to sell his Bigfoot films. What just absolutely, it's like Butchie Kid, man. At least you can laugh at Butchie Kid. He wore a sombrero. This is like the worst gorilla suit ever. Yeah. Tom Biscardi creates Amazing Horizons so that he can distribute the Ivan Marx Bigfoot films. February 1971, Ivan Marx is in Colville, Washington, hunting Bigfoot after tracks show up there. He says he's under contract and being paid by Peter Burns National Wildlife Conservation Society. Marx tells the media he has 70 feet of film of Bigfoot and produces tracks and handprints. 1971, Marx also to be released from his contract with the National Wildlife Conservation Society. Peter Burns discovers the site where Marx filmed. In 71, we'll get back to that guy, Pickens. He's a sideliner, little creepy jackass. Anyhow, that's the timeline. 1972, Ivan Marx produces 2 films that are now universally said to be alleged fakes. Marx sells one of the films to You Asked For It television program for $25,000. Biscardi is involved in the background dealings, allegedly. Yeah. There was one more thing that I wanted to bring up about Ivan Marx, but it all comes down to Cripplefoot. That's right. In his documentaries, The Legend of Bigfoot, Animal Tracker, Ivan Marx opens by mentioning the film in the culmination is 10 years of research. He says that the Eskimos called the creature Bushman, the Colville Indian Sasquatch, and the Hoopa Uma, but is most commonly known as Bigfoot. Marx's brother-in-law takes him to the land of petrified wood, showing him rock carvings of creatures with big hands and feet. The carvings tell the story of a creature stealing children, causing a village to be abandoned. Marx finds large tracks in the snow and later a dead bear with similar tracks nearby. He finds strange hair between the bear's teeth and sets out to track the creature. He finds the tracks in the mud beside a river and something moving nearby, and he intends to inform others, but the rain washes the tracks away. The legend of Bigfoot. That's right, people. Ivan Marx. So, with that, why don't we go ahead and take a quick quasi break, and we will give you Dean Cooper's quasi theory of the week in rerun. That's right. Let's give it a listen. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
The calendar. The calendar doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, but I'm going to focus on the names of the months. This being January, I'll start with it. Starting with January makes sense not only because it's the first month, but it's also named after the Roman god Janus. Janus was the god of beginnings and endings, of passageways and doorways, and gates and transitions. He has 2 faces because each of the things he was the god of could go 2 ways, in or out, begin or end, this way or that way. Janus is about the only god the Romans didn't get from the Greeks. He is a purely Roman thing. Some scholars think January was named after the goddess Juno because she was considered the tutelary deity of the month, the guardian spirit of January. Juno has her own month named after her, which we'll get to in a few months. February was not named after god or goddess. Its name comes from the Latin word februum, which means purification, and a particular purification ritual, the februa. The whole month was dedicated to purification, but the februa was the main one. The februa was always on the 15th of February and was part of the festival of Lupercalia. I did a whole dissertation on the Lupercalia last year for Valentine's Day. Look for Valentine's Day Schmalentine's Day on my blog and my YouTube channel. March. You should all know, if you had any real education, the March is named after Mars, the god of war. April. April, now the 4th month of the year, used to be the 5th month and the 2nd month before it got to be the 5th month. Explaining those switcheroos would take a whole quasi on its own. The name April, Aprilis in Latin, generally is said to derive from the Latin aprirere, or to open, as in buds and leaves in spring. May is named after the Greek goddess Maya. The Romans called her Bona Dea, the good goddess. Her rituals were secret. Only women were allowed in. Maya was a goddess of growth, which makes sense since stuff starts to grow fast in May. Juno is named after the goddess Juno, obviously. She's the wife of the great god Jupiter. I can find no good reason as to why Juno got June, except maybe that she didn't want to piss her off, what with Jupiter being her main squeeze and all. Now, the names of the rest of the months go screwy. July and August are named after the two Caesars, Julius and Augustus. When they went and stuck their months in, it buggered up the rest of the year. You know, September, October, November, and December, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th months, according to their names. Now they are the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th months. The early Romans had only 10 months. That pretty much ignored the missing 61 days until the calendar got too far out of whack relative to the seasons. Then they'd scoot the months around until things lined up again, usually with a long holiday. Leave it to the upper crust of the upper classes to permanently snarf up a couple of months a year for themselves and make the rest of us work an extra 2 months. You may read the text of this on my blog at bhaidin.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
Bhaidin.com. That's right. It's your quasi theory of the week. Boy, it's a good thing I picked that rewind out from January, huh? All right, folks. I gotta put myself back. Weird. Anyhow, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to remove. I am just not good. There, that's what I was trying to do. Okay, now I didn't remove my volume from the stupid show. God, what ridiculousness. Anyhow, don't forget August 5th through August 9th, 2020 is the big Bigfoot campout in the Pai Valley in the El Dorado National Forest. Last year we discovered an Indian campsite where the grain bowl was actually ground into the granite rock right there above the campsite on the ridge lines. Can't say that for sure that we heard return calls from our calls last year, but there was a good chance that things like that can happen because that valley is known for Sasquatch. And with all the snow that we're getting this year, those guys will be hanging out there in the lush greenness. That is for sure. So August 5th through August 9th. If you want to go camping with the Reverend here, just let me know at slaunchpodcast@gmail.com. You can get a hold of me on Facebook. You can get a hold of me on Messenger. All kinds of ways to get a hold of me. So, yeah. All right, folks. Let's give some shout outs here to see who's hanging out in the land alive tonight. Mr. Rod Dupree, he's always in the place to be. That's right. Speaking of Mr. Rod Dupree, we actually have access to gold claim this year down there at Pai. We'll be actually able to go and work and get some yellow stuff out of the ground. So that'll be neat. Timothy McCune. Hello there, Tim. How you doing, pal? Natalie Smith, she's in the house. So glad you are feeling well. Hope your mom was feeling well as well. Kenneth the Viking, there's the man. How you doing, Don? Glad you are with us. The Reverend Matthew Gaines. Reverend. Aaron Duncan's in the house. How you doing there, Aaron? Jill Abagast, how you doing? I think that's the first time I have seen that name. All right. Shane Barber's in the house as well. Can Squanch. How you doing there, Can Squanch? Glad you are with us. Ken is in the house. Hello there, Ken. Sam Squanch Rivera, there he is. He's been out a few weeks, and we're glad you're back to seeing us live tonight, my friend. Let's see here. Moving on down the line here a little bit. I know we have Mr. Dave Jackson's in the house tonight. Hello there, Dave. Glad to see you are here with us as well. The SoCal Forest Ninjas, SRG. Hey, man, come camping with the Rev in August. It's going to be a heck of a time. Swimming, fishing, gold mining, squatching, ATV riding, all kind of crazy stuff. Lance Windsor, how you doing? That's right. And just like the old Rev here is a relic, I actually have a trike. I don't have a quad. That's right. Mine only has 3 wheels. And it's dangerous as hell. Straight up. I ain't gonna lie to you. Obsidian Radio. Life's short. Live hard. How you doing there, bud? Glad you're with us tonight. Jeremy Harrison. Hello there. You're Hobo Man 5. Back in the house live. All right, we're moving down here to Jeremy Crotio. How you doing there, champ? Glad you are with us. Moving on down the line here. Should be getting close to the bottom. If you haven't said hi to me, I don't know you're here. Hey, there's Miss Bella Allegria. Glad to see you are with us as well tonight. And that, my friends, looks like at the list of who's watching live tonight. So glad that you guys are here. Okay, so we're going to move back over to that funny looking guy, only we're going to change it over back to the timeline. Now, the skeptic.com, of course, has a big long diatribe over Sasquatch, but specifically they've actually talked about Ivan Marx himself as well. Now, in the section that says what has been leaving those thousands of tracks in all of these decades. And the most famous cases, usually the best cases, are unfortunately tainted by the likelihood that they could or are hoaxes. One such case is that of the famous Cripple tracks discovered near the now abandoned mining town of Bossburg, Washington State. The tracks at first seemed authentic because one of them had a deformity. They were first discovered by Ivan Marx, a Bigfoot researcher who had recently moved to Bossburg. Rene de Hinden, the same man who's been involved with the original 1957 publicity stunt, reached the site next, took the plaster cast, and began searching the area with Marx, finding 1,089 well-defined prints, an apparent rest area, and even a spot where the creature relieved itself in the snow. More Bigfoot hunters arrived. A hoaxer named Metlow appeared, asked for money, and led the researchers on a wild goose chase by first announcing that he had a Sasquatch for sale, and then that he had a frozen Sasquatch foot in his freezer. Most of the researchers left in disgust when he twice failed to deliver. Marx continued to make astonishing finds, handprints, footprints, and even a film of Cripplefoot itself, luring de Hinden and other researchers back. They competed, making offers of money for the as of yet unseen film. But after months went by, it was discovered that they had been taken again. The film was blank, but within a year, Marx resurfaced peddling a different fake film of a Bigfoot on TV. So there is a big involvement in Mr. Marx himself. I usually don't do this, but we're going to try and give it a whirl over StreamYard. I'll have to say that I have figured out how to make the settings with StreamYard work, but this is a video in the Bigfoot archive, archive.org, of Ivan Marx's first film of the Sasquatch. And I believe the film itself is probably, it's universal. So it's CC 1.0 usage, which means it's basically in the public domain and it's free to be freely used. My channel isn't monetized, so screw them. Let's see if we can get it to play. Apparently not. Well, I was hoping. All right, let's see if we can get something that I had already previously queued up. Yeah, no, it's not going to allow us to do it, unfortunately. Okay, well, I mean, it's literally somebody in a really god-awful Bigfoot suit limping and hobbling around as if it's the same Bigfoot that he found the footprints and the tracks of that Dr. Grover Krantz actually was believing in, which is, it's very odd to think of it that way. And I wanted to finish up our presentation on the hoaxing of Ivan Marx. The hoaxed Ivan Marx footage is told by Peter Byrne, former head of the Bigfoot Project, and his thoughts on the Marx footage. Some bumbling statements have recently been made via internet lists about the original Ivan Marx 1971 Bigfoot film footage and my association with it. The original of the origin of the statements, the person who made them, is unimportant, but it is them. The footage is described as an actual film, and it is suggested at the time Marx produced it that I am guilty, with the end in view of commercial gain, of exhibited to the local dignitaries in Bossburg, northern Washington, where Ivan Marx lived at the time of its making as a result. Lord knows how much money. The statements, like others that emanate from this same petulant source of boringly regular basis, are, as I can prove, blatantly untrue. First, let's set the record straight. When I was associated with Ivan Marx, which was for the brief 3 months that he worked for me in early 1971, there was no film. There was a short piece of 16 millimeter footage made by him of what he says was a Bigfoot that ran for about 30 seconds. That truly is all there ever was. Ivan Marx, an amateur cinema photographer and mediocre woodsman, shot the footage in late 70 or so, he said. And when I came upon the scene in 1971, my job, as primary focus of the new Bigfoot research program, was to examine the footage, determine its authenticity, and then, like my work as a designer and director of the original Northern California Bigfoot Project, follow up with full-time research. When I first met Marx at the start of 1971 Bigfoot Project, at which time I recruited him into my team as a salaried full-time employee and provided him with camping gear, outdoor clothing, a snowmobile, and new International Scout. And he told me that his Bigfoot encounter began with an early morning call from a railway train driver who said that his engine had hit a Bigfoot the night before. The man, Mark said, gave him the location of the accident, and the same day, without delay, he set out to track and find the Bigfoot. There was a blood trail, and he said that led him into some 4,500 foothills, roughly 6 miles northeast of Bossburg, Washington. About midday, in bright sunlight, under a clear sky, close to the deep snow line of the upper hills, he caught up with the Bigfoot, which he said was limping and appeared to be injured. The creature, he stated, weighed at least 650 pounds and was covered with thick, dark brown hair and stood at least 8 feet in height. Marx said that as soon as he saw the creature, he turned his 16 millimeter movie camera on and shot about 30 seconds of footage in 3 10-second sequences. And then dropping the camera, which he apparently carried on his shoulder strap, he quickly and within seconds to spare pulled his still camera and took half a dozen pictures. The Bigfoot then disappeared, so he left the area and walked back down a main road. Then, coming out of the woods, he met several people, among them Norm Davis, the owner-operator of the Colville radio station, Bill Harper, a Department of the Immigration and Naturalization Officer, Don Byington, a local rancher who later joined my research team. He told him that he had caught up with Bigfoot and had been able to get footage and still pictures of it. Discussing the event with Mr. Marx, he told me that the place where he got the footage definitely had more Bigfoot living in it, and that he said he had seen several sets of fresh footprints while taking the injured one, and as soon as it was spring and the snow drifts melted off, he would lead me there and we could get more footage. In the meantime, the area being too rugged for snowmobile access, he suggested we wait for the snow to clear. I agreed and in turn told him that in the interim he could work for me on full salary with all the expenses on a general research in the Botsburg and Colville area. As to the footage itself, which he wanted to sell to the Bigfoot Project sponsors for $25,000, I guaranteed him this amount to be paid after we had thoroughly examined it and were satisfied with its authenticity. In return, as a guarantee of good faith, he agreed to let us hold the master copy. He gave this to me in a sealed metal film container, and I immediately sent it by registered mail to Washington, D.C. to the offices of my attorneys, there to be held in trust, unopened until such time as we made a positive decision about the work. He also gave me on request a working copy of the footage for study and analysis, allowing me to take selected 8x10 prints from this for the same purpose. In addition, he gave me enlargements of the still pictures he said he had taken from his film subject. The first cracks in the authenticity of the footage appeared when I was about 2.5 months into the project. In late March 1971, they surfaced one evening during a study showing of the work copy of the footage at a home of Don Byington at his ranch about a mile east of Marx's home. Present at the showing were Don, his young son, Stephen, about 8 at the time, Don's wife, Alta, Dennis, veteran Bigfoot researcher who had worked with Roger Patterson, was now a member of the research team, Bill Harper, Norm Davis, and his wife. These, incidentally, were probably the local dignitaries referred to by the accusatory source mentioned at the beginning of the article. When the showing was over, I heard young Stephen whisper to his father that he recognized the place seen in the footage. The place that Marx said that was the site of his Bigfoot encounter. The boy was puzzled, he said, because the place was not 6 miles north of Marx's house in the hills, as Marx had stated, but actually at the edge of the forest that bordered the northern boundary of their ranch. Stephen's remarks were heard by others, but were discounted at the time in the imagination of an impressionable young boy. But later that night, lying in bed with my research-based house at Evans, a scattering of small houses halfway between Colville and Ballsworth, and listening to the bitter winds of the end of the wild both, I kept thinking what the boy had said and found myself bothered by it. The next day, I went to see Don and his wife, and a little later that morning, accompanied Don, Bill Harper, Dennis Jensen, Norm Davis, young Stevens, led us on a search for the place he thought he recognized at the footage site. And sure enough, we found it. Using the 2 sets of 8x10 enlargements from the footage and the still pictures, we're very quickly able to positively identify it via objects cleanly seen in both the pictures and the site itself. These later included large rock stones, dead branches, frozen cow droppings, a rusted piece of metal from an old tractor, and most important, a small tree past which Marx's creature is seen moving in the footage. A tree with a horizontal branch under which it walks without stooping just before it disappears. The branch, it noted by all, measured 6 feet from the ground to walk under it without stooping. The subject of the footage could have only been a maximum of 5 feet 11 inches in height. We said nothing to Marx about our discovery, which was plainly that he had misled us about the site of the footage, but continued to employ him, his principal job being to search for footprints. He reported finding several sets over the course of some weeks, but for various reasons was never able to lead us back to them. In the meantime, we pondered on our discovery and privately discussed it, and it worried us. In the last days of March, I got a call from Norm Davis. He said that he had made an important discovery about the footage and that I should come quickly to his offices at the radio station in Colville. I did so, and there found Don Byington, Bill Harper, and Dennis Jensen waiting. Norm sat us down around his desk on which he had laid out the aforementioned 2 sets of enlargements. He brought us all coffee, waited while we examined the pictures, then said, "Do you see it? Do you see what I've discovered?" We could not see whatever he wanted us to see, so he leaned forward and pointed. The film subject in both sets of pictures photographed in bright sunlight had a distinctive shadow, and the shadow angles of each set were different, clearly indicating the 2 phases of photography. The movie photography and the still shot had been carried out at different times and not, as Marx had told us, seconds apart. We had a brief meeting and then decided it was time to have a serious talk with Mr. Ivan Marx to ask him, among other things, how he could have been mistaken, to put it kindly, about the site of his filming and how it was that the movie footage and the still pictures appeared to have been taken at different intervals. And so the next morning at 6 a.m. to confront our enigmatic employee while he was still drinking coffee, so to speak, we all went to Marx's rented home, a dilapidated tar paper shack just off the highway at Vosburg, to find out what he had to say about the little discrepancies in his story. Alas, we were too late. In the night, as was clearly indicated by the discarded personal belongings strewn across his front yard, our quarry had gotten wind of our plans, as they say, and up and run for cover. And in a hurry, he left a veritable river of trash running from the opening, flapping in the wind front door of the shack where he had parked his Volkswagen Bug, one that included ancient and tattered magazines and newspapers, old patched and repatched gum boots, torn cotton towels, plastic raincoats, ragged shirts, woolen hats, ripped up oil and grease-stained work shirts and trousers, empty motor oil containers, rusting baked beans and soup cans, stained ragged blankets, mayonnaise and jam, pickle jars, dog food cartons. Boy, Peter didn't have a whole lot of, wow, sorry. Yeah, Marx headed, as we heard later, for Bernie, a town in Northern California where he lived before coming north to make his Bigfoot film and find fame and fortune in the Bigfoot world. Now here comes the piece de resistance, as they say. Meanwhile, back in Washington, D.C., Mark's original footage supposedly lay in the office, safe of my attorneys, and there posed a question. In the light of our discovery of the fact that the footage was obviously a total fabrication, we were justified in opening the sealed canister that he had left with us in good faith, pending its purchase by us for an agreed $25,000. I consulted with the members of my team and then made a call and told my attorneys to go ahead and open it. They did this to find that the canister did indeed contain probably 100 feet of neatly coiled film. Original Bigfoot footage of Marx's immortal achievement? Alas, no. If you like, laughingly no. For what the wily Mr. Ivan Marx had given us was about 100 small cut pieces of old Disney black and white Mickey Mouse footage from the 50s and 60s. Later, I understand Mr. Marx went on to make several full-length Bigfoot films, which he distributed commercially. Some of them, I've been told, are quite extraordinarily hilarious, might be a better word, and show Bigfoot swimming, running, and jumping, bathing in a river, playing kick the can, climbing trees, and in one case, actually waving at the photographer. But this was later, and not while we were associated with him. Nope. All we got for our honored efforts was Mickey Mouse, and darn it, not even in color. Mr. Peter Byrne, 2003. And there you have it, folks. Mr. Ivan Marx. Yeah, that's crazy. Oh my goodness, people. That is just insane. So if you ever wanted to know who Ivan Marx was, well, now you know. And come next week, we'll be talking about his successor, Mr. Tom Biscardi, who is to this day still utilizing the techniques of Ivan Marx. And we will get to that as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being here. We will be back next week. I'll have a Bigfoot campfire story for you. And we'll seem like we'll be back to a little bit of normalcy. So with that, thanks everybody for being here. And may the Squatch be with you. Joan, get me a Snapple.